Ever feel like you're losing years of your life just stuck in traffic on Thika Super Highway?
Oh, tell me about it.
Well, today we're going to dive deep into some uh, serious time-saving hacks for navigating this beast.
Love it.
You've shared a mix of sources with us, a guide with insider tips, articles on the highway's development,
Yay.
and even some local wisdom from online forums.
Sounds good.
So if you're ready to turn those 2-hour commutes into a much more manageable 30 to 45 minutes,
Right.
we've got your back.
It's amazing how much Thika Road has transformed Nairobi, but the traffic can be a real headache.
Yeah.
Luckily, with a little bit of insider knowledge, you can actually use the highway's design and surrounding developments to your advantage.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. I'm looking at an article here about the highway's impact,
Right.
and it mentions that travel times have been drastically reduced.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that just mean more cars on the road?
Yeah, it's true that Thika Superhighway has attracted more traffic since it was upgraded. But those infrastructure improvements have made a huge difference.
Okay.
We're talking about shaving hours off commutes,
Wow.
which has boosted the economy, people's quality of life. That efficiency is key.
Right.
But you're right, it also means we need to get smarter about how we navigate all those extra cars.
That makes sense.
Oh,
So where do we even begin?
well,
Our guide mentioned something called service lane secrets.
oh,
I always assumed those were just for buses.
yeah.
They're really a shortcut.
That's a common misconception. Service lanes are actually designed for local traffic management.
Okay.
And they can be a secret weapon for those in the know. Think of them like express lanes for navigating specific sections of the highway.
All right, I'm liking this already. But wouldn't all the bus stops in the service lanes cause even more congestion?
Well, PSVs are actually required to use the service lanes for picking up and dropping off passengers.
Right.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it actually helps keep things flowing on the main highway. Plus, it's a safety measure to keep pedestrians and slower-moving vehicles separate from faster traffic.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if I'm using the service lane strategically, where are some key entry and exit points I should know about?
The guide specifically mentions points like the Survey of Kenya area,
Okay.
the GSU headquarters, and the Outer Ring interchange. You can also find strategic entry and exit points around popular destinations like Garden City Mall and TRM.
Wow. I never realized those shopping centers could be used that way. It sounds like I need to start thinking about malls as more than just places to shop. They're like navigational hubs.
Exactly. And if we're talking about thinking outside the box,
Okay.
let's move on to something even more intriguing.
All right.
Hidden bypasses.
Ooh.
These are routes that can help you avoid the city center altogether, saving you tons of time, especially if you're heading to the airport or areas outside Nairobi.
Ooh. Hidden roads, now we're talking. Tell me more about these bypasses.
One impressive example is the Eastern Bypass. It's a massive road, 60 meters wide and 40 kilometers long,
Wow.
connecting areas like Ruiru, Kangundo Road, Embakasi,
Okay.
and even stretching all the way to the airport. Think of it as a lifeline for avoiding downtown traffic altogether.
So I could potentially bypass the city center completely. That's a game changer for anyone who frequently travels to those areas. This is already making me rethink my whole approach to Thika Road.
And here's a bonus. The development of these bypasses has had a massive ripple effect on surrounding areas. We're talking about a tenfold increase in property values in some places,
Right.
attracting businesses and boosting the local economy. Good infrastructure really does pay off.
That's incredible. But I have to admit, bypasses sound a bit intimidating. Are they easy to navigate?
Absolutely. They're well signposted and designed for smooth traffic flow.
Okay.
And if you're worried about getting lost, there are plenty of navigation apps that can guide you.
That's good to know. So we've got service lanes and bypasses covered. What's next on our journey to conquering Thika Superhighway?
Well, even with these secret routes,
Right.
there are still some notorious bottlenecks that pop up, especially during peak hours.
Yeah.
Knowing where those are and having a plan to avoid them is key.
All right, let's get tactical. What are some of those notorious bottlenecks,
Okay.
and how do I avoid becoming a statistic in them?
Think of areas like Kenyatta University's main gate,
Okay.
the Kahawa Sukari underpass, and of
Nice.
course that dreaded Githurai roundabout. These are all major congestion points, especially during the morning and evening rush hours.
Okay, those are some serious traffic hotspots.
Yeah.
So what's the strategy for avoiding them?
Right.
Do I need to memorize a bunch of alternate routes?
It's less about memorization and more about understanding the flow of traffic. Think of it like a game of chess.
Okay.
You need to anticipate your opponent's moves
Right.
and plan your own strategy accordingly.
That's a great analogy. So how do I become a Thika Super Highway chess master?
The key is to exit the highway before you hit those bottlenecks.
Okay.
Our guide highlights exits like the Roy Sambu roundabout, the Ruaraka overpass, the GSU headquarters intersection, and the Pangani underpass as strategic points to escape the chaos.
So it's all about preempting the congestion and finding escape routes before things get too crazy.
Yeah.
But what happens once I've exited the highway? Am I just stranded in the suburbs?
Not at all. There are a number of clever alternative routes you can take.
Okay.
For example, if you're coming from Yuja, Thika, or Ruru, Kiambu Road can be a real lifesaver. It eventually links back to the highway at Muthaiga, allowing you to bypass some of the worst congestion.
So it's like a strategic detour that saves you time in the long run.
Exactly.
I like it.
Okay.
But what if I'm not coming from those areas?
Right.
What other options are there?
Well, for the more adventurous, there's what our source calls the rough but effective route from Kasarani through Babadogo. It might not be the most scenic drive, but it can be a surprisingly efficient shortcut. And speaking of shortcuts, let's not forget about the residential areas surrounding Thika Road.
You mean those neighborhoods that have sprung up along the highway? I've noticed a lot of new development in those areas.
Exactly. Remember all that economic growth we talked about?
Right.
Well, it's not just about malls and bypasses.
Okay.
The highways development has led to a boom in residential real estate.
Right.
With some areas seeing property values increase by as much as 1,000%.
Wow, that's incredible. But what does that have to do with traffic shortcuts?
All that new development has created a network of interconnected estates, offering multiple escape routes from the main road. Think of it like a hidden maze of shortcuts that only locals know about.
So it's like having a secret map to navigate the back roads. That sounds pretty awesome.
Right.
Are there any specific estates you'd recommend exploring?
Our sources point to areas like Kahawa Sakari, Zimmerman, and Ngumba as being particularly strategic for those looking to bypass traffic.
Right.
And if you're a young professional who wants to be close to the city center, it's worth noting that these estates are all within a 10-kilometer radius of Nairobi.
That's perfect. You get the convenience of city living with the added bonus of traffic-busting shortcuts.
Yeah.
It's a win-win.
For sure.
But I have to admit, the idea of navigating residential areas during rush hour makes me a little nervous. Wouldn't using those roads inconvenience the people living there?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
It's important to be respectful of the residents and avoid creating additional congestion in those areas.
Right.
The key is to use these shortcuts strategically and responsibly, avoiding peak hours when possible, and being mindful of local traffic patterns.
That makes sense. It's all about finding a balance between saving time and being considerate of the community. So we've got service lanes, bypasses, and residential shortcuts.
Right.
What other tricks do you have up your sleeve?
Well, remember those shopping centers we mentioned earlier?
Right.
They're not just retail hubs. They're also navigational gold mines.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do I use these shopping centers to my advantage?
They offer internal roads and connections to service lanes that can shave precious minutes off your commute. Instead of battling it out on the main highway, you can strategically weave your way through these shopping centers, using them as shortcuts to bypass congestion.
So it's like a real-life choose-your-own-adventure, but with traffic instead of dragons.
Yeah.
I love it. But wouldn't driving through shopping malls add even more time to my commute?
Not necessarily. Many of these malls have become mini cities in themselves, offering everything from banking and medical services to entertainment and dining. You can actually run errands and bypass traffic at the same time.
It's like they're designed to help us outsmart the congestion. This is all starting to make sense. I'm seeing Thika Super Highway in a whole new light.
Good.
And don't forget those parallel estate roads we talked about.
Yeah.
They're not just for residents. They can be your secret weapon during peak hours.
For sure.
Okay, remind me about those parallel routes.
Yeah.
Where are they and when should I use them?
Think of areas like Kawawendani, Roysambu, and Garden Estate.
Right.
They've got these estate roads running parallel to the highway, offering some relief during the worst of the morning rush, typically between 6:50 a.m. and 9:00 a.m. And again, during the evening chaos from 5:00 p.m. to 8:00 p.m.
So it's like having a backup plan for when the highway is at its worst. I like having options, But how do I even know which roads to take?
Yeah.
It seems like there are so many possibilities.
That's where observation and a little bit of local knowledge come in. One tip straight from the locals.
Okay.
Pay attention to matatu routes.
Natasha, you mean those colorful minibuses? Yeah. What do they have to do with traffic shortcuts?
They're masters at navigating the back streets. Matatu drivers are experts at finding the most efficient ways to get around, often using shortcuts and side roads that most drivers don't even know exist.
So those matatas aren't just a cultural icon.
Right.
They're a source of traffic wisdom. I love it.
It's all about observing and adapting, just like those matatu drivers. But there's one more layer of local knowledge we haven't tapped into yet.
Oh, there's more. I'm all ears. What's the next level of Thika Superhighway mastery? We've talked about major interchanges and bypasses, but you mentioned another layer of local knowledge.
Right. It's those smaller, often overlooked intersections.
Okay.
They might not have fancy names or overpasses, but they can be game changers for weaving through residential areas and dodging those surprise bottlenecks.
You mean those little turnoffs I usually zoom past without a second thought? I never realized they could be so strategic.
Exactly. They're like hidden pathways in a video game.
Right.
Leading to secret levels. They're often less congested, allowing for a smoother, more efficient flow of traffic.
So it's about understanding the micro movements within the larger traffic patterns?
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like a Thika Superhighway strategist.
And that's the goal.
Yeah.
Remember, successful navigation isn't about memorizing one right route. It's about having a toolbox of options and choosing the best one based on the time of day, your destination, and the ever-changing flow of traffic.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. It's less about following a set path and more about adapting to the situation on the ground.
Exactly.
But with so many options, how do I know which move to make?
Think of Thika Superhighway as a living, breathing ecosystem.
Okay.
The traffic patterns, the shortcuts, the local knowledge, it's all interconnected.
So it's less about finding the perfect route and more about understanding how all these elements work together.
Precisely. Think of it like a dance, a constant flow and ebb. You need to be aware of the rhythm, the tempo, the other dancers on the floor.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So how do I become a master of this Thika Superhighway dance?
It takes practice, observation, and a willingness to experiment.
Right.
Don't be afraid to try new routes, even if they seem unconventional.
Okay.
Pay attention to the flow of traffic, the time of day, even things like major events happening in the city that might impact traffic flow.
So it's like a giant puzzle where the pieces are constantly shifting and I need to find the patterns and connections to make it work.
Exactly. And just like with any puzzle, the more you practice, the better you get.
Okay.
You'll start to develop your own personal cheat codes for navigating Thika Superhighway based on your unique needs and destinations.
This has been a complete eye-opener. I feel like I've gone from being a traffic victim to a traffic ninja.
I love it.
And that's the power of local knowledge. It's about taking control of your commute. And turning what was once a source of stress into an opportunity for discovery and efficiency.
Absolutely.
We started this deep dive talking about a 2-hour ordeal.
Yeah.
But now it feels like 30, 45 minutes is totally achievable. Even during rush hour.
Remember, successful navigation isn't about luck. It's about understanding the system and making informed choices. So go out there, experiment, observe, and find your own personal flow on Thika Superhighway.
This has been an incredible masterclass in urban navigation.
Thanks for having me.
A huge thank you to our amazing sources and to you, dear listener, for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of Nairobi traffic. Until next time, drive safe and stay savvy.